Okay, let's check for understanding. Here we have a map of three areas. As I describe a part of the British plan to attack, you're going to point to the area of the map on this image that I'm describing. The British wanted to attack our coastal cities, including Washington, D.C. and Baltimore. Okay, what area did you pick? Right, you should have been over in this area, the coastal area. The British wanted to launch an attack from Canada and move into New York State. Okay, so we go up here by Canada, here, and they want to move down here into New York State. The British wanted to capture New Orleans and gain control of the Mississippi River. Go way down south to New Orleans, here, and they want to control the Mississippi River here. So, in what order did the British plan to take these actions? Well, first they planned to launch an attack from Canada to New York State, then to attack the coastal cities such as Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and finally to capture New Orleans to gain control of the Mississippi River. Now, you're going to record information about the USS Constitution. So now you're thinking about things that you're going to read aloud about the U.S. Constitution, USS Constitution. So, what was the nickname for it? Old Ironsides. So we will put that in number one. I'm going to put in parentheses because that's what it was called. Next, what did it have on it? Big white sails. Whose side was it sailing for? The U.S. So that means it had American flags on it. And remember why they called it Old Ironside? What was the size of the ship made of? That's right, iron. So it didn't have the wood like the older ships. And it could shoot what? Cannonballs. And what did this ship do at sea? Right, it won victories. This was a good ship. Had victory at sea. Very hard to destroy. And the last thing about the USS Constitution, it had thick walls. So when they tried to shoot cannonballs at it, very hard to penetrate. It's thick walls. Going back to the name Old Ironside. All right. Let's go over some questions to discuss to read aloud. What role did Great Britain's war with France have on the war with the United States? Well, although the U.S. military leaders thought that the war would distract Great Britain enough so that the U.S. would have an easy victory. It did not have that effect. What country was Britain already fighting against? Great Britain was already fighting against France. What effect did the end of the Napoleonic War have on the War of 1812? Well, it allowed the British to shift all of their attention to the fighting with the United States. Can you describe the three-part plan of attack the British had? We just spoke about it. Yeah, first they planned to attack from Canada in the north to enter the state of New York. Then they planned to attack the East Coast cities such as Washington D.C. and Baltimore. And finally, they planned to capture New Orleans and gain control of the Mississippi River. Why did the British want to prevent Why did the British want to prevent the United States from getting supplies? Well, without supplies, the might not be able to fight for long and will have to surrender. And what was the USS Constitution? And why was it called Old Ironsides? Well, it was the U.S. naval ship, and it was called that because during the battle, British cannonballs bounced off of its sides. Okay, why do you think the knowledge of our waterways was helpful for the Americans in the War of 1812? Yes, the Americans were able to sneak around the British blockade and get the supplies that were needed. Your next word is economy. The word economy means the system of buying, selling, and trading items or services. Let's connect. Presenting a persuasive speech. Remember that you wrote a speech in the last lesson. You will be presenting those speeches in this lesson. Well, not in this lesson, but you'll be reading over it. You'll present when I come back and check your work. So, what is the word used to describe a speech that is intended to convince someone to think or do something? Well, that's a persuasive speech. Make sure you go back over your persuasive speech that you wrote out and that it sounds like something you would want to read out loud to someone. So you need to read it to yourself, maybe in a whisper voice, and make sure that it sounds right. If it doesn't, you need to go back and change some things. Because in your presentation, you're going to explain that it is important to maintain eye contact with an audience while giving a speech. Remember to speak loudly and slowly enough so that you are heard by the audience. And finally, you will stand up straight and you're not going to move around too much while you're giving your speech. Okay, so that is the end of these lessons. Make sure that you study your study guide that was sent out this week because you have a little quiz on lessons 1 through 4, a midpoint domain test when we return back next week. Have a good weekend.